Here we are in Times Square. It is Brian Dunkelman and the Black Eyed Peas.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time, decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all our information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
Gene, tonight's film is very special. Last week we did Die Hard 2, and this week we're getting to continue. And I personally thought it's been a lot of fun, and it's something I think we should try to do going forward, because when you schedule these series or these films or these franchises in order, they're fresh in your mind. You can compare them. It's a lot of fun, and you can reference each of them in the order. So I think it would be good if we did this again.
Absolutely. I found a lot of parallels between 3 and 2. And of course, I watched Die Hard, the original, over the Christmas break just for funsies. So with all these films fresh in my mind, I can make a lot more of an educated approach in reviewing these films.
Yeah, and I think with them so close together, you can pick up on subtle differences. And it's then fun to go back and look at the time they were made, the years, and what may have affected it. So it was a lot of fun. That's why I'm excited for tonight.
I noticed in this one, they added Samuel L. Jackson.
Son of a bitch. I knew you were going to go there. Really? I couldn't. That wasn't Al?
Yeah, different black guy.
This was an angry black guy. So it was very, very different. And that's why, Gene, I was excited tonight when two of our listeners, two family members, came together to do a family commission. Longtime listeners, I think there's over 7 years, been with us since the very beginning. They were a little bit guilty that they hadn't contributed. They felt we were getting all this free content. So they wrote in and commissioned together, this is for Luke and Patrick, the third installment of the legendary 80s and 90s franchise, the Die Hard franchise. And tonight, Gene, we're coming back with a vengeance. So thank you very much to Luke and Patrick.
And Luke wrote in and said, "Hey, Shat Crew, as longtime listeners, my brother-in-law and I have finally commissioned one of our favorite movies, Die Hard with a Vengeance. So excited it made the docket for January. First of all, while others have said it better, I just wanted to say thank you for what you do. It clearly means so much to so many to hear friendly, funny, and joyful voices come through the headphones week after week. As for the movie at hand, Die Hard 3 is my comfort food. It's grandma's meatloaf and my childhood security blanket in film form. You don't have to search to find it. It's always on somewhere and will always hold a very nostalgic place in my pop culture orbit. As a 15-year-old kid, I remember paying the 50-cent matinee price at the second-run theaters to watch it alone while the rest of my family went to see Pocahontas on an adjacent screen.
Love it.
I made the wise choice. Does it hold up? I'll leave that to your commentary. But even without the problematic sandwich board scene in Harlem, I'd argue it is the grittiest and darkest entry in the franchise. I actually think it has an underrated and down-tuned complexity, even with some silly set pieces and bad special effects. And while I'm not objective enough to judge the film on its merits, I just wanted to offer one thought on the admittedly tacked-on coda of an ending. Critically speaking, would this be one of the better action movies of the 80s and 90s if it ended with McClane's phone call to Holly and fading to black? Simon gets away, John loses, and the movie underscores the fallibility of its hero, yet reinforces that he still dies hard. We didn't need the catchphrase and goofy helicopter scene. A sequel with Simon returning would have been great, but we did get a new sidekick, some snappy dialogue and pacing, and although a trope, one of the best New York as a character movies. Curious as to your take on that. Oh, but ignore the filmed yet scrapped alternate ending if you find it on special features. It's somehow even worse. Again, thanks for everything you do, and Yippee-ki-yay, Luke from Indy. Luke, it says something that Die Hard with a Vengeance is a movie that can bring brother-in-laws together. And bad special effects, my friend, I think the special effects were pretty damn good for the time. It was 1995. Big D shaking his head.
No, a lot of good practical effects, but he's obviously talking about the bridge jump. That was some bad green screen or the explosion into the water. I think that's specifically the moments that he's focusing on.
It was an homage to Nakatomi Tower and Hans Gruber falling. Come on.
That's what it was? Yeah. Well, I'm going to dismantle that theory as we get into this. But Luke, I appreciate it. I'm on board with so much of what you said. New York is a great character in this, and the ending felt a bit off. Besides the one you've mentioned, there is an ending that was proposed, filmed, and almost made it to the release that might have made us all happy and could have ended this series in a legendary fashion. But I'll get to that later.
Well, Die Hard with a Vengeance is a 1995 action thriller based on the screenplay Simon Says and characters created by Roderick Thorpe for his 1979 novel, Nothing Lasts Forever. The third film in the Die Hard film series, Die Hard with a Vengeance, was followed by Live Free or Die Hard and A Good Day to Die Hard. The film stars Bruce Willis as NYPD Lieutenant John McClane and Samuel L. Jackson as McClane's reluctant sidekick, Zeus Carver. McClane and Carver team up to stop an East German terrorist group headed by Simon, played by Jeremy Irons, who have planted bombs across New York City and plot to steal the gold bullion of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Die Hard 3 initially received mixed reviews, but became the highest grossing film of 1995. So, Big D, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the film. This week, it is Die Hard with a Vengeance. What do you remember?
Gene, what's fun is for the last couple of weeks, I haven't had a real memory of films where I saw them. This one is distinct. It's one of those movies I can remember the theater. I can remember where I sat. I can remember who I was with. So my college girlfriend, I may have been like a freshman when this came out. My girlfriend lived in Inwood. It's way in the northern tip of Manhattan. So when I used to hang out with her, we would always take the train and we would go see movies. One of the theaters that just opened, Lincoln Square. I think at the time it was a Lowe's. It's now an AMC. So it's like 13 screens. It is right down the street from 72nd and Broadway, the subway station, where it's the first phone call that Zeus and John get, where they get out there and they do, oh, it's a bomb, and they jump on the floor. So the cool thing was we saw this in the middle of the summer. We're able to walk out, go down the street. You felt like you were in the movie. And this theater, I had great memories. I remember waiting in line for Batman and Robin, the one forever, the really cheesy, the nipple bat suit. Mm-hmm. And when Luke wrote that he saw this in the $2 theater or whatever it was, a 50-cent theater, and his family saw Pocahontas, I also remember seeing Pocahontas in this theater. So the time frame matches up. It was really, really fun to go back. I love that theater. I have great memories of this movie and that summer. So it was nice to go back. A lot of great memories.
Well, it's a sad or exciting moment in the Shat The Movies journey with Die Hard. We have finally reached the point where my Die Hard knowledge ends. Die Hard 2, Die Harder, that we did for John, that marked the end of my Die Hard watching career. I honestly didn't know prior to watching this movie for Luke what exactly it was about. My only inkling, Big D, is from our podcast theme song from Guys Night. That's how I know the plots of any movies past Die Hard 2, Die Harder. So this was the first watch for me.
Yeah, I think they've only gone up to like the fourth film. I don't think they've gone all the way to a Good Day to Die Hard, but I'll need to go back and check.
Good Day to Die Hard, that's the one with like the Russians? It's like in Russia?
Yes, I believe Live Free and Die Hard, which was the biggest but the box office success. That did like 134 million.
Really?
That is, I thought it was Shia LaBeouf, but it's not. It was, I think, the Mac, Mac and PC, that kid.
Mac ads,
yeah, it was the Mac kid. He plays like some hacker, and it's about a domestic threat. So that was U.S. Then you go to the next one, which is A Good Day to Die Hard, and somehow he ends up in Russia. That was the one that kind of lost me.
Who did you hate more, the Mac guy or the Encyclopedia Britannica guy?
I don't even know who the Encyclopedia Britannica guy is.
He was like a blonde guy with like round glasses, I remember.
No,
I hated that guy. No, I think I hated him because he had encyclopedias and I didn't.
No, but you can't hate the Mac guy because he blew up.
Full of himself.
Dude, he had a great gig, getting paid big money. And then I think he got high and posted something on social media and got fired. So he lost a killer gig. That was like a Brian Dunkelman like failure with Seacrest on American Idol that he could have been
bribed. Who the fuck is Brian Dunkelman?
He's the guy who started on the first season of American Idol with Ryan Seacrest. Then like season co-host? 2 comes up. Yes, he was a co-host. The two of them did season 1. Yes. I think his name was Brian, but I know it's Dunkelman. We got to look that up now. I think it's Brian Dunkelman.
Yeah, Brian Dunkelman.
Yes. So he held out for a little bit more money, and Seacrest said, I'm signing. Boom. The rest is history. Imagine, Gene, we're going to go 2025. And it's like, Here we are in Times Square. It is Brian Dunkelman and the Black Eyed Peas. That's what this world could have been.
Let's hit the trailer.
In the hands of a mastermind of terror.
I want to play a game with Lieutenant McClane.
What kind of game?
Simon Says.
The path to revenge leads straight to John McClane.
If we don't do it, this guy says he's going to blow up another public place.
Well, why me? What has he got to do with me?
I have no idea. He just said it had to be you.
It's nice to be needed.
Simon Says, get to the paper in Wall Street Station by 10:20, or the number 3 train and its passengers vaporize.
I'm not jumping through hoops for some psycho. That's a white man with white problems. You deal with it. Where the hell are you going, McClane? I know what I'm doing. Not even God knows what you're doing.
This guy wants to pound on you till you crumble.
Are you aiming for these people?
No. Well, maybe that mime.
He wants you to dance to his tune and then kill you.
Oh, dear.
You don't like me because I'm white.
I don't like you because you're going to get me killed.
On May 19th.
This is a bad idea. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a New York police officer. I'm going to ask you to calmly and quietly start moving towards the other end of the car.
When the theater goes dark.
Trust me, guys.
Duck. The roof blows off.
Guy out there setting off bombs. And for some reason, he's very angry with me.
This, as they say, is where the plot thickens.
They knocked over the Federal Reserve.
Bruce Willis, Jeremy Irons, Samuel L. Jackson.
Congratulations, you're still alive.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother. In a John McTiernan film, Die Hard with a Vengeance.
John McClane, NYPD. Are you all right? Yes. Laundry day.
After a department store in New York City is blown up, a man identifying himself as Simon telephones the NYPD and claims responsibility. Making demands in the form of a Simon Says game, he threatens to detonate another bomb unless Lieutenant John McClane is sent to Harlem wearing a racist sandwich board. McClane is dropped off in Harlem, where he is confronted by a shop owner named Zeus Carver. McClane explains the situation, and before a group of gang members attack him, Carver intervenes and saves McClane. They escape in a taxi. So, Big D, we just did Die Hard 2, Die Harder, and I know you appreciated that movie, jumping right into things. It's Christmas, it's snow, John McClane's car is being towed. It sets the tone. We know exactly where we are. I agree. That's a great approach. It moves fast, but it still starts with John McClane. So we know, okay, here he is. And then it does a little bit of hand-holding to tell us what's happened since the last movie. Die Hard with a Vengeance, it starts off with a bang as well, but it feels so abrupt to me. There's an explosion. We got Simon on the phone, and suddenly McClane is in the back of a police van with a hangover. I literally had to rewind to make sure I didn't miss something. Yes, we eventually learn that John McClane is split up with Holly and he's hungover, but why was he suspended? Why is he in New York again? He was in LA last time we saw him.
Yeah.
Even a movie as simple as Lethal Weapon at least would have had someone from the police department go and get Mel Gibson's naked ass out of bed, throw him in a cold shower or something to let us know, here he is, here's what he's been doing.
Yeah, but I think this is a case because we've watched them now back to back. The films came out 5 years apart, 1990, 1995. I will bet you to the normal audience, it was not as jarring as it was for us. Because you get the cell door closing, doom, doom. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're back on a ride. It's going to be what we wanted. They're going to feed us. They're going to spoon feed us more of that nostalgia. But no, it's different. They don't even show McClane. We get to be introduced to New York City. It's waking up. You're seeing people shopping. The businesses are open. There's cars on the street. And I'm thinking this is just establishing where we are now. And then boom, the explosion. Chaos reigns. It's almost as if they were saying, hey, Gene, hey, Dick, we know that you want to have that same comfort food of Die Hard 2, but this is going to be very different. Didn't feel the same. It didn't feel like the Die Hard movies. It reminded me more of 1991's The Last Boy Scout, where you have Bruce Willis. He's playing a dirtbag divorced detective. His name was Hallenbeck, Joel Hallenbeck, right? He's hungover. He catches his wife in bed. It's a darker feeling story, and that's where we meet him. And this is not the normal holiday film. This isn't a Christmas feel-good, yuck. For the first 9 minutes of this movie, you're trying to get your footing. You're not quite sure what Simon's plans are, but you know McClane is part of it. It's personal. He's threatening him, hey, do this or I'm going to blow this up. And I'm thinking this is going to be kind of a funny, it's going to be something goofy. It's going to be something funny until we get slapped in the face. McClane is standing with that sandwich board in the middle of Harlem with a sign that says, I hate n-. And you're just, as an audience, you must have been like, what the fuck is going on? And they hold this reveal just long enough so that it's truly shocking. And that's when you know this is not going to be the wisecracking, funny, like John McClane of the first two films. It is darker. It is Roger Roper, grittier. This is like a gritty Die Hard. They're unafraid. They're going to make us uncomfortable. And we're going to go into spaces that the first two movies didn't.
The Fast and Furious franchise, love it or hate it, what is it known for? Each movie like escalates above the next one, and it just keeps doing the same thing but more of that, right? And when we reviewed Die Hard 2, Die Harder, John got us talking about how the sequel to Die Hard was just more explosions, more deaths, more Christmas, more people not listening to John McClane. And I felt like the studio here was listening again to the audience and said, fine, let's do something different. And it's like a 180. Now it's not Christmas time. It's the heat of summer. John McClane, he's not in LA. He's back in New York City. And people are actually listening to him now. When he says something's afoot, they're like, fuck, okay, he's right. And his instincts aren't always right. So it's still the same guy, but they've switched up the formula to keep things fresh.
Gene, when they went from classic Coke to new Coke, ooh, it's a new flavor. That was a bad idea. You didn't need to do that. Yes, we might want something different, but don't act as though those first two films didn't happen. What we loved was the nods to the first films. It doesn't have to be the same, but address, hey, how's this happening again? Oh, I can't believe I'm back into an air duct or whatever. This movie is overtly trying to pretend like the past didn't happen, right? McClane, now this is happening. McClane is wondering in the police station with all of these detectives, hey, who's got a bone to pick with you, John McClane? And nobody thinks of, hey, that Nakatomi Plaza thing might have been big, or the terrorist with that general in Esperanza in Washington, D.C. No, they think it's a tax attorney who like kidnapped his partner's daughter. That's really who you think it is? You can't act like nobody remembers what happened to John.
His name was Simon.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was
okay,
the lead. He used his name.
Oh, you've cracked the case, Gene. You should be with NYPD. You should crack it.
That's right.
But the one thing they do that is a nod to the past, but it is an improvement, is the partnering. Because that's one of the consistents across the Die Hard movies, is McClane is going to end up with some black partner who doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to be in that situation. In the first movie, you got Twinkie eating, Sergeant Al Powell. Then in the second one, you got the air traffic controller Barnes. Die Hard with a Vengeance goes a different way. We get Zeus, played by Samuel L. Jackson, and this man brings a completely different energy. He's not the goofy, funny sidekick who's going to set up McClane for some zingers. No, this is a version of McClane. He's an alpha. He's not there to support McClane. He's not going to take his shit. He's going to sit there and give it to McClane. For the first time, McClane's got a partner who's as quick-witted as he is. He's as stubborn as he is. He's not going to sit back as the sidekick. These are two alpha guys with different intentions who are going to try to survive the day and maybe save some kids in New York.
Seeing Samuel L. Jackson in his 40s was such a trip. And I know we've done Pulp Fiction, we've done Long Kiss Goodnight. That's all the same era. He was in his 40s there too, but somehow he looks younger here, right? He's not in that sort of a costume. Like, it's just Samuel L. Jackson. I did, however, notice while Samuel L. Jackson was sprinting next to Bruce Willis, that man does not know how to run. I'm not talking Danny Glover shit in his pants bad, but it's pretty bad. He's got like his elbows like kind of way too high. It made me very uncomfortable.
That's a simple answer, Gene. Samuel does not run away from anyone. He doesn't have like a history of running.
Right.
He stands and fights. It's like, I bet you Chuck Norris. We'll see. We're doing Delta Force soon. I want to see Chuck Norris run because I'll bet you Samuel has never run away from anything. So, Gene, we have done one other Samuel L. Jackson movie that's coming to mind. It's besides the Star Wars ones, which I don't think you were on. We did Coming to America. It was one of his first films. Do you remember his role?
Does he run in that?
I believe he is the robber in the McDowells that gets knocked out with the mop.
Thought you were going to say he was your royal penis is clean, your highness lady.
No. So even then, he's a badass. This man is a legitimate badass, and he's a perfect addition to the franchise.
And with that new type of counterpart in this movie, we do get an interesting race dynamic that the movie plays on pretty heavily. Die Hard with a Vengeance was released in 1995. This was the year after Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis starred in Pulp Fiction. It is a time in America when discussing race relations in major motion pictures was fashionable. Spike Lee had been doing his thing for years. Films really started to feature Black people as more than the help or thugs or comic relief. They were complex characters. They could be aggressive. They could have an attitude. Carver could be anti-cop, and that was a part of his character, and that would pass in a film. And he could say things like, "We don't get help from white people." It would spark some discussion. McClane, on the same note, he could wear a sign with the N-word. This movie had the highest box office take of 1995 with a sandwich board with the N-word on it. And I think that we have declined artistically from this era. And I'm not trying to be a remember when guy, but let's just think about this. On one hand, right now, in 2025, the right would say that this movie is too woke. It's bringing race into things. This is a police movie. Stick to terrorists and action. Why you got to bring race into it, right? On the other hand, and I'm saying this as a leftist, the left would say this overly simplifies race relations. These guys shouldn't even be getting along at all. And it used a racial slur. Like, this movie's inappropriate. Fucking neither. This movie does a great job, accurate or not, of at least letting a Black man and a white man fucking interact and have a conversation.
Seriously. I totally agree with that. When we can't have a discussion about something, we're in a bad place. And I know, whatever, I'm coming from a from my perspective, but they give it to each other. And I think in the end, they find some common ground that would be refreshing today. You shouldn't be afraid to have hard discussions. And that's where we've come to.
Well, Carver and McClane arrive at one police plaza where Simon demands they follow a timed challenge. They agree, and McClane eventually boards the 3 train heading toward Wall Street Station to defuse a bomb. He finds the bomb and throws it on the tracks just as it explodes. McClane and Carver regroup with the NYPD and meet federal agents who reveal Simon is the brother of Hans Gruber, whom McClane killed years earlier in Los Angeles.
So the movie does follow a similar formula to the previous movies, but they inject a brand new plot device, which makes it seem fresh and gets us off and running. From that moment that we meet Zeus, we're off, and it's Simon's riddles. Simon, we don't know what his reason is, but we know that he is going to start to play. He's going to pull the strings on John, and he comes up with these riddles and brain teasers. And they're not just like problem-solving equations. You have logistical challenges that I, as a New Yorker, thoroughly enjoyed. You have that bomb on the 3 train. So they have to navigate 90 blocks in 30 minutes through New York traffic, and they can't use any kind of police or fire vehicles. They have to go only civilian travel. And that riddle, it's a nightmare. I don't know how you can do it. And the complexity as these riddles keep going, it is great to ratchet the tension. They're constantly on the move. They're constantly trying to deal with each other and new situations. You know, how the hell are we going to pull this off? It's not a game. And the ticking clock, it works because they're always against the clock. There's no downtime, and the plot is just flying.
I just realized, Big D, that you and I, all these years apart, didn't meet until very recently. We have a thing in common. We're both New Yorkers. We were both born in the same state.
Who knew?
New York City means a lot to me, as I'm sure it does to you. And it was really odd to watch this movie in a post 9/11 mindset. Like, yes, we've had Transformer movies and Independence Day and loads of other blockbusters where New York City is under attack. But it was really weird to see. There were so many shots with the Wall Street people, like in their suits, covered in like ash and soot and screaming in the streets of Manhattan. It really brought back a lot of that day. And then I realized there are people legally drinking today that weren't alive for 9/11. And then I thought, they probably don't bother to like look up the footage. They probably have not seen 9/11. And so this movie just looks very different to me as a person who, I don't want to say lived through 9/11 like I was there, but a person who remembers that day, right? It was kind of jarring. And I think it's the movie that most closely resembles 9/11 without being a 9/11 movie.
We got to see how Hollywood thought first responders would react to an attack in New York. What was shocking to me, or what kind of brought me back, was they even mention the original Trade Center bombing in 93.
Yeah.
They talk about, hey, do you remember what it was like down here? Because that's the area. That's the Wall Street area. And it was shocking, and it was just kind of brought you back to that moment. And it kind of felt very real, and maybe that added to it. And it was sad also to see how innocent we were and how protected we felt and how we thought the police and everybody could keep us safe. And it was surprisingly emotional to go back and see the footage, like you said, and we see the Trade Center and we see the city and how innocent we were. And at this time down in the Wall Street area, we get to see Simon's plan, and it kind of becomes unraveled. It goes from the Simon Says chase to go to different locations around Manhattan. And I thought they did a good job of disguising it. You know, McClane mentions early on, we hear about the dump trucks, the 14 dump trucks being stolen. So that's our first clue. Then McClane notices, hey, there's something strange about the Wall Street bombing. It was going to go off regardless if we'd been there. He knows this is a potential clue, but it gets lost in the chaos because immediately Simon introduces the bomb threat to the schools. It's a perfect distraction. He's got the entire police force. They're running around. They're searching schools. He gets them to turn off their radios so there's no communication. They leave the gold repository wide open. And it's only when you see then Simon from above that you realize, holy shit, this is not a revenge story. This is, like he said, this is just about the money. It's a calculated heist hiding in the chaos of what we think is vengeance. And the best part of it is I think it caught me a little off guard, and I didn't see it coming the first time. And this time, watching and waiting for the clues, they did a good enough job to hide that you didn't pick up right away who it was and what was going on.
It's like the opposite of a Batman movie. Like in a Batman movie, the crimes make sense, but then you discover that actually they're there to like fund or empower some comically eccentric dumbass who wants Batman's attention, right? Like that was the plot all along, Batman. I was really glad to see this mystery picked apart with no clue other than the lyrics. Simon wasn't clear with his intentions. It was just a distraction. And there is no way that McClane could know that Hans Gruber was Simon's bro. That's what made it Die Hard with a Vengeance with Samuel Jackson, right? But I agree with you. It makes sense, right? It's far-fetched, but it makes sense. Like, why would he be toying with McClane? If he really just wanted revenge, he'd just kill him.
Agreed. And it's smart. Like, if I was going to try to kill somebody, I would always try to hide it in the middle of other killings. It's a smart thing to do. If you take your rifle out, like I remember they thought the DC snipers, they thought the DC snipers were a string of snipings and one or two in the middle were actually strategic or personal. So it's a smart way to disguise it. Hide it in plain sight. And it was believable on the way they would react today, knowing the way that first responders respond. You know it wouldn't work. They wouldn't abandon an active crime scene. But back then, we didn't know.
Pro tip, by the way, if you do plan to bomb a subway train in order to get to the Federal Reserve, just know that although the police will leave, the fire department's still probably going to stick around. And other personnel, like city personnel, city engineers, shit like that. They might notice you getting into the vaults. Bank robbing tip from your friend, Gene Lyons.
Good tip.
Simon places another call to the NYPD. Could you imagine if they just had bodies everywhere? Like if the bomb had actually gone off in the train? What are you going to do then, Simon?
I almost think that would have been a better plan. That they should have come in mixed as paramedics. And they could have used ambulances to move the gold.
Paramedics with drills?
Whatever, dude. We'll get to the logistics of it. But if it blew up and actually blew up part of the vault, whatever. Nobody's going to go down there and investigate if there's body parts. I think the fact that there was no body parts, the looky-loos would have come around like the reporters, like, hey, what's going on? If there's blood and guts everywhere, people are leaving.
The real money's in the taxi cab medallions. Just steal all those. Pro tip from your taxi friend.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting you to know.
Why, because I'm Persian?
No, because your uncle. What's the problem?
Yeah.
You remember when I said, hey, what's the problem with Argyle? And you said, what's the problem with him? He can't be. My uncle's 45. He drives a taxi. I remember that shit.
Simon places another call to the NYPD, informing them that he has planted an explosive in an elementary school. He offers to give the authorities the school's location if McClane and Carver follow another timed challenge, warning that he will detonate the explosive if any evacuation attempts are carried out. McClane realizes that Simon is attempting to distract the NYPD away from Wall Street, which has no schools, and travels to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York building. He discovers that Simon's men have stolen $140 billion worth of gold bullion from its vault using dump trucks. He follows the trucks to New York City Water Tunnel number 3, while Carver continues Simon's challenges.
So, Gene, again, this seems like it was such an innocent time back in the day. It was so innocent seeing Simon and the crew. They're physically tearing through the Federal Reserve, the vault, and they're going to steal $140 billion in gold. It's wild because he brags. He's like, 10 times the gold that's in Fort Knox. Now, in 2024, this feels like an old school Western where like, we're going to rob the stagecoach. Yeehaw! And they're going to go rob there and they're going to steal like 20 grand. Today, you wouldn't need dump trucks. You wouldn't need explosives. You wouldn't need this whole Simon Says shit. You would get some hackers who are going to go into the computer. They're going to like understand the blockchain and they're going to steal Bitcoin. They're going to pull off some ransomware attack. It's going to be quicker. It's going to be a lot less sweaty, Gene. You don't need to go down into the dirty, exploded subway. And it's so funny how the idea of like the big score has shifted. When I heard 140 billion, I'm like, really? That's a lot of work for 140. I'm like, that's heavy. I'm like, couldn't you do something computer? Even like you'll get some treasury bonds with those, whatever those were. You go with those. They're lighter. You make more money. You don't got to work. This was a lot of work for this theft, Gene.
in a world where everyone's gearing up to protect themselves against cybercrime, maybe now is the time to be stealing the gold bullion. You know, they're probably paying less attention to the tunnels outside of the Federal Reserve.
Right.
You know, they got a little greedy. And they addressed it in the movie. Like, just take like one cart full. That's good. You're rich.
Because Hans, he was stealing bearer bonds. Because you remember Roger was struggling with that? That was $640 million in bearer bonds. That's an easier thing to take out. That's a lot. It was a smarter like heist. I would have gone.
Yeah, but that's less than $1 billion. Simon's got $140 billion with a B.
If I'm going to pull off this heist in New York, Gene, I think it's very important that I make myself in the midst of a terrorist attack to look as American as I can, to sound as American as I can. And Jeremy Irons, fantastic, phenomenal actor. You cannot go without discussing his fake American accent that he tries to pull off during the bank heist. He's the biggest liability. He is not good. And I don't know if it's intentionally he's trying to do that country good old boy vibe, like, hey, y'all, I can't believe there's been a bomb blowing up down here. Immediately, one of those New Yorker cops would have been like, who the fuck is this guy? They're like, I want to look, let me see that ID again that you just flipped me. It is a dead giveaway. You'd feel like something is out of sorts, and you immediately would go after Simon and you'd question him. It is a flaw in the plan. For these guys to put everything and to hinge it, you're walking in there with the Luftwaffe. Some of the guys don't even speak English. Maybe have them drive the truck. Don't get them interacting with the few police officers that are still there. This is an issue.
It would be an issue in Kansas City or like Dallas. This is New York City. I mean, I've heard some weird fucking accents in New York City. My family, my whole family, bunch of Kurds who then moved to Iran, learned Farsi, then moved to Europe for a while, and then they moved to New York. So while they're calling, water fountains bubbles, they also are saying like, where is gas station?
Right.
It all comes together in a nasty soup of language.
Okay, so Gene, but after, let's say, September 11th, right?
Yeah.
If you had your family members dressed up as NYPD and they were like, do those exact lines as a member of your family hiding in plain sight as an NYPD police officer. Let's hear, how would that work?
This summer is hot. Let's go to a swimming pool.
Oh my goodness, the flames coming out of the trade towers, very hot.
What are they, Sebastian from The Little Mermaid?
I don't know. I'm just saying that that would have been a tell. Somebody would have questioned your family.
Well, thankfully, although the security guards at the Federal Reserve don't know what the fuck they're doing, we got John McClane.
Yes.
You can't pull one over on John McClane. And you mentioned Big D and Die Hard 2, Die Harder. John McClane, he's impulsive.
Loose cannon.
He jumps headfirst into his suspicions. We don't see all the times that he's wrong, Mm-hmm. I think we're starting to see John McClane go a little crazy in this movie. Like, not only does he need very little evidence to act, he needs very little evidence to kill. Like,
Yes.
The evidence needed to execute people, it's a low threshold. There's an elevator scene, as you mentioned. Simon's men, they're messing up their American colloquialisms. One of them has the dead giveaway, the Inglourious Bastards type giveaway, where he calls the elevator a lift. Another guy has the badge of a dead cop whom McClane knows. So, yeah, McClane knows he's in a bad situation. He knows that there are some guys here who are not all they're cracked up to be. But it's not like he talked to every guard in the elevator before blowing their brains out. In the tunnel, he walks up to a dump truck, doesn't look to see who's inside, doesn't talk to them all, doesn't bother to identify them, just starts shooting through the door, kills everyone inside.
So this is just like in Die Hard 2, when he finds the magazines loaded with blanks. He doesn't check every single round. What if one of the guys had made a mistake? He just rips through like 40 rounds in a magazine into the chest of the dullest police, the captain. He does not pay attention. He just walks up to the truck, like you said. He assumes that there's bad guys inside. He shoots them through the door. No hesitation, no confirmation. But what would have happened if that was our friendly truck driver, Jerry, the knowledgeable truck driver who later tells them that it's Chester Arthur as the 21st president? He does not even hesitate. And it's this weird thing because McClane, his impatience and his intuition, they save lives sometimes. He sees somebody kick a package under a table while drinking in a busy airport at Christmas, and he identifies, yep, something's going on here. But that also can go the wrong way. There has to be, in his long career, dozens of people who have been killed because he is wrong, he is impatient. Yes, he's a hero, but he's not exactly a careful hero. You know how, like in some of the DC movies or the superhero movies, they've kind of gone the way of having people question, like Superman. Mm-hmm. Like Superman, yes, you saved some of Metropolis, but you also cut a building in half and killed probably tens of thousands of people in the fight. There has to be online message boards about people condemning John McClane and other ones who are claiming him as a hero. And then people saying, no, my entire family died because of McClane's actions. He must be controversial in world.
There's an interview where Samuel L. Jackson says that he decided to play the role of Zeus Carver as an actual person who would be witnessing John McClane in real life and react accordingly. Yeah, I think part of that reaction would have been like, dude, you're going to get somebody killed. You're crazy. What are you doing? You're a hyper-violent cop. Maybe you should let somebody else step in and help. Why are we even doing this?
I would love to see what his message to the kids of the community would be later on, because he already was questioning police. He'd probably add a caveat and be like, listen, if you ever see this motherfucker, this short, balding, like older cop. You remember the guy with the message board?
Yeah.
Stay away from that guy. Stay away from him. He'll get you killed.
Well, Simon floods the tunnel, but McClane escapes and reunites with Carver. Surviving a car chase with Simon's men, McClane and Carver find the men were carrying exactly enough money to pay a bridge toll. When the pair sneak aboard a tanker docked in the Long Island Sound, Simon's associates capture them and tie them up next to a bomb. Simon broadcasts a message claiming that he is planning on destroying the tanker filled with the bullion to destabilize the Western world's economy. Carver and McClane free themselves and escape the tanker just before the bomb detonates.
So I had remembered from my early viewings of this that the film felt a bit bloated and long. And looking at it and comparing it to last week, to Die Hard 2, I think they're right about the same, like a little over 2 hours. They're somewhere in that same window of time, but this one feels a lot longer. And I felt like Die Hard with a Vengeance starts to drag, and this was the first time I could pinpoint it. When the Federal Reserve heist is revealed, and now we know why, everything is going on, they choose to separate. The dynamic pair, the duo of McClane and Zeus, they separate them. And their chemistry is what kept the beginning flying. They're going from point A to point B, trying to problem solve. And now you have these two separate storylines that aren't as fast. You don't get the witty banter. The action is now split between these two stories. For me, I lost that spark. When you tell these two stories, it slowed down the momentum. And it became, instead of this action flick, and it lost that kinetic feel. I just wish if they had stayed together through the entire, found a way to weave it so these two guys don't separate and go to Yankee Stadium, keep them problem solving, the movie would have been just a beeline out of control, like taxi cab through Central Park, instead of this slow trot that at the end of 2 hours and 10 minutes, I was like, come on, pick it up.
Keeping them together, it's not hard. In fact, it seemed like they went out of their way to split them apart. Like, you're writing the plot, just don't create situations where they have to split up. And it's a weird choice because logically it doesn't make sense. It's not like McClane and Carver are police partners, right? Carver is not a cop. He has no real reason to stick around and help. Remember his store in Harlem? No, he just left. The door's wide open. Like, what do you think's going on over there? It's do the right thing, right? And it goes back to my complaint about Die Hard 2, Big D. The message here that we're getting is basically anyone is better than the police, the FBI, and the military, right? Even a 40-something electrician who can't run, that guy is a better partner to be going along with. Why is no one else going with McClane? No other cops are available? Not a single officer from the FBI? What the fuck?
No, everybody just busts his balls. I think he has earned, hey, you know what? You were right, John, those 2 times. We're going to shut up. We're not going to make fun of you for losing your wife, for being hungover, for looking like shit. We're going to support you in this moment, John. And it's at this point, it is getting long. It is, I could feel it. Keep them together. Why did he have to go to Yankee Stadium? Why did you have to have that ridiculous dump truck in the aqueducts and he gets shot out into the air? Oh, he just happens to be there. And then the sniper streamlined all that shit. Now we know more. We know like what water does, like all those, the tsunami videos. John is not holding on to that grate and fighting against tens of thousands and million gallons of water rushing down a pipe.
2025, ladies and gentlemen. Now we know what water does.
Yes, it doesn't shoot you up in a playful spray as your friend drives by in a stolen like BMW or Mercedes. No, it's not. And I felt this way the first time, and I feel it now. By the time we get to this now, we're getting towards the end. We should be like racing to the finish, Gene. Instead, we're running on fumes. It's messy. We get here now, there's the Coast Guard, and Simon makes that message, we're going to redistribute wealth, the same bullshit his brother did and try to pretend like they were political. Then they're going to double cross the mercenaries. Then they're going to sink the gold in Long Island Sound. It's drawn out. You could have cut off at least 20 minutes of the end. And the final act starts to slog down. You're just like, okay. Oh, we got another set piece. Where's Die Hard 2? It was nonstop. We mentioned it last week. It was boom, boom, boom. And they were fun. It kept you going. But here, it's a lot less fun. It was just like they were struggling. They didn't know how to stick the landing, Gene. And it was felt on screen.
I mean, by that rationale, the entire subplot with the journalist on the airplane in Die Hard 2 was unnecessary and made them added minutes to the movie that didn't really help at all.
Oh, about 3 minutes total, Gene?
It's 3 minutes I would have liked back. I could have made a sandwich.
I'll make you an edit, Gene. I'll make you an edit.
Did you miss the part, Big D, in Die Hard with a Vengeance where a guy got sliced in half by a steel winch cable? Or the part where John McClane very satisfyingly beat the shit out of a giant German with a chain? Come on.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, that was all in the part that you wanted cut?
I'm completely fine with that. I'm completely fine. But we have two different boats, Gene. Two different boats. Two different conversations with the mercenaries. Two different double crosses. You didn't need it all. It was the best. It was too much. More Germans getting cut in half. I would take those. I would take more Germans cut in half.
There's a formula, though. It's Die Hard installment minus one is however many of things that you have to have. So in Die Hard 3, you need two boats. Die Hard 2, you could have gone away with one boat. They went with an airplane crash instead. Die Hard, they just had a building because it's exponential.
But we had helicopters. We need some new FBI guys. We had helicopters in 2 and helicopters in this, Gene. Your formula is flawed.
Oh, Big D, the original Die Hard cost $28 million to create. Die Hard with a Vengeance cost about $90 million to create. So they had more than triple the budget. I appreciate that they gave us all these big blockbuster effects. The train bombing, the number of extras in this movie. There's so many people in this movie, mostly children, shooting on location in New York City. This was not on set. This was mostly shot on location. That shit adds up. You know how expensive it is to shoot in Manhattan? And the effects, I'll say again, Luke, pretty good by 1995 standards. As a lover of chase scenes and car stunts, I think this movie is wonderful. We get that taxi cab speeding through Central Park. We get a Mercedes getting beat to shit. We get a Yugo because Yugo. That probably added like $10 to the budget. We get a pickup being dragged by a freighter, an amazing 270-degree J-turn with a dump truck that made my jaw drop. I'm not saying that bigger is always better, but you can tell they put a lot of love into this movie. They wanted to create a spectacle. I appreciate it.
So, but I think my problem is the ones you mentioned there, these ridiculous like near-death experiences.
Yeah.
We think back to the one we talked about, the 9-for-9 grenades into the the open window of that transport. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. He pulls the ejection seat on a plane that doesn't have one. That is a wink and a nod like, hey, just go with me here. This, it gets to like a ridiculous. It's the winch cable onto the boat, which is speeding along, yet they don't seem to realize it's going to run out soon and it's going to pull the truck off the edge. They should be moving with a purpose. And it was just as if, let's try to one-up it. Let's get everybody to the edge of the seat. That wasn't fun. That was just kind of lazy. And then they fall down, the guy gets cut in half and whatever. And it even felt a bit sloppy, like technically. You know, we had Luke mention the green screen. That was not Hans Gruber, because they even show that scene in this film for the people who didn't know who Hans Gruber was. And they're like, hey, in case people forgot, throw in 5 seconds of Hans falling. That shit looked great. This shit with that winch cable looked like trash.
I mean, it's Alan Rickman. He looks good doing anything.
He does.
While attempting to place a call to his estranged wife, Holly, McClane notices a bottle of aspirin given to him by Simon was stamped at a truck stop on the Canada-United States border. McClane informs the NYPD and joins them as they rush toward a warehouse where Simon and his men are redistributing the bullion. Also, they had to take Zeus with them because Simon and his girlfriend Katya attempt to escape in a helicopter, but McClane shoots an overhead power line, which snares the helicopter, killing Simon and Katya. He does it at night with a handgun, by the way, folks.
He's a good shot.
While they're celebrating their triumph, Carver persuades McClane to place another call to Holly.
Okay, so Gene, we've talked about in this podcast, we talked about before, McClane, he figures shit out through observation and good detective work. He sees a situation, he's got a good intuition. He remembers when they talk about those 14 dump trucks. He recalls, hey, that's insurance fraud. I remember that happened. Yes, that is a good detective. He's better than everyone around him, as you like to say, Gene. But in Die Hard with a Vengeance, the big break is not detective work. It happens to be a stamp on the bottle of an aspirin that Simon just somehow just tosses him to him conveniently. He notices it. It's like the writers were like, okay, Jesus, how do we tie this up? McClane's got to figure out there's another boat on the Canadian border. All right, what if there's just a label on the bottom? It was convenient for them to do it. It was disappointing because I wanted McClane to use his observation, his superpower, I think I called it last week, Gene, and his ingenuity to figure out a way to solve this case and to solve the situation. Instead, it's just random luck. For me, it fell flat.
I think we're forgetting one element that makes the Die Hard series so good, and that's the self-awareness. And I agree with Luke and with you, Big D, that this movie could have ended and probably, I think it would have been a better movie if he doesn't win. That the real win was just fucking surviving, dying hard, okay?
Yeah.
But the movie addresses that because we got Carver as the voice of the audience, and he's basically saying, hey, John McClane, you saved the day. Sometimes the bad guys get away, but you did a lot of good. You're still alive. That's a win in itself.
Yeah.
But this is Die Hard. So the movie says back to the audience, true, but fuck those guys. Let's go kill them.
Gene, you're on it. And that ending should have been the ending. You are correct. You're 100% correct. The alternate ending, I'm going to walk you through how it happens.
Okay.
We don't get that entire last bullshit with the extra tanker. When the first tanker explodes, Gruber gets away. He successfully escapes with the gold. John McClane then tracks him down to a bar in Hungary. And there is a prolonged, 6-minute scene where they're talking to each other. And McClane is now throwing him riddles. Like he goes, McClane me this. A plane crashes on the border between Hungary and where do you bury the survivors? And Simon is giving him the answers to it. In the end, McClane, with some improvised rocket launcher, blows up Simon. And they went away from that because they felt like this was too dark and it lacked the fun action ending of the original. So they had to go back and reshoot this additional boat, this additional ending. The original ending is exactly what you wanted. Simon gets away and John is left to sit there and wonder, calls Holly, whatever. The vengeance was McClane going back after Simon.
That makes sense because if you think about the way this film ends from a action standpoint, right? It's not on par with everything else we've seen. Because if you summarize it, right? McClane's helicopter goes down. Simon's helicopter goes up. Simon shooting McClane. McClane shoots a wire. The wire hits the helicopter. He dies. It's overly simplistic. It's zero effort, right? And so it makes sense that this was not what was initially intended.
No, and that's why it felt bloated for me. It felt long. You get that whole, it should have ended at the exploding ship. The exploding ship, he gets away. And instead here, it keeps going. You get Simon and escaping. We get that whole, we're an army without a country. It seemed like a weird place in the film to start building the backstory of this army of mercenaries. Then they decide to get frisky. We get a sex scene with Katja and Simon.
I like that
They
part.
They apparently have time for that. You could feel them grasping at straws. And it makes sense. When the original, that wasn't where it goes. This would have been great with McClane. You finally broke him. McClane is no longer that happy-go-lucky guy. He's a drunk, divorced, angry. He's doing things that are morally wrong. And it would have been great to leave this as a final bookend on the series and the franchise. But instead, they went with whatever they kind of wanted. Was more action, more yippee-ki-yay motherfucker, and more shooting out power lines in the dark.
Now, I was originally going to accuse you of being too uptight, too pressed for time. You didn't take the time to sit down with this movie with a Green Piggio in your dainty fingers on a beautiful Sunday afternoon and really take your time to savor all the flavors of Die Hard with a Vengeance. But you make a very strong case. I thought what you were saying with the movie is too long. What you're saying is the movie loses its way.
Yes.
And that's very different. I won't argue that. Now is the time in the podcast where we give our Shat score for Die Hard with a Vengeance. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes the movie takes to get our respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's being the 21st president. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It's when someone's got you fitted for a toe tag and is going to do anything to get it tied. I'll go first, Big D. This movie is just above average for me. We're seeing a steady trend of decline in our Die Hard scores, with Die Hard being the top, Die Hard 2, Die Harder, a little bit lower than that. And I think finally we've reached the point where I'm going above 1 wipe here, and I've reached a 2 wipe score for Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yeah, I left this one blank to the end because I really wanted to discuss it. I was originally going to go 2.5, but I can't. You still have Bruce Willis. You still have Samuel Jackson. There's so many good parts. I can't fault the film for the end. I can almost imagine it didn't happen. In my mind, the film ends after the boat explodes and he calls Holly and that's it. We're left to wonder what will become of this man, our hero, who's now lost everything he cares about. But I can't go 2.5 or above because it's still a Die Hard film. Maybe later on in the series if we get there. But 2 wipes, I'm confident with. If you streamline this could be right up there with part 2. But 2 seems fair right now.
All right, it's unanimous 2 wipes from Big D and Gene Lyons.
So, Gene, that now ties us in the 158 spot with Tombstone, Beverly Hills Cop, The Blues Brothers, Pet Sematary, Tommy Boy, Johnny Dangerously, If Looks Could Kill Kids, Teen Wolf, and Perfect.
I see a lot of parallels with both Beverly Hills Cop and Blues Brothers. I think this movie that's appropriate.
Agreed.
Well, Patrick, Luke, I hope 2 wipes satisfies, and thank you for advancing us further in the Die Hard series. Now, Big D, it's time for some email. The first one comes from Brave Sir Eric, who says, "Hey guys, do you already have a commission for the 2026 Spooktacular? If not, I'd like to commission 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I still plan to commission Toy Soldiers, but was busy all of October prepping for my last board exam and had a family emergency."
Brave Shark, we do not have 2026, and I would accept that in a heartbeat. That movie terrified me as a child. It terrifies me now. I'm uneasy with that. The chainsaw is a very dangerous weapon. And I remember seeing that as a kid and believing it was a true story.
Well, yeah, because it tells you where it is. It was in Texas.
No, but I think it was like based. It was one of those like fake based on stories, if I'm correct.
When I was a kid,
Yeah.
if you put the name of the place in it, I was like, yeah, that happened.
You must have been afraid of a lot of films.
I wasn't afraid. I just acknowledged it happened. I also was like, well, I'm not going to Texas.
What about Escape from New York? Did you think that really happened in New York?
No. That's different. That's got a sci-fi name. It's fine. Well, all right. Sounds like that's a yes. Bracer
Yes.
Eric. Thanks. Let's get that one loaded. Also, it's a great video game if you guys haven't played it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's an asymmetrical survival game. Really good. Next commission request comes from Josh in England. He says, "Morning Shat. A belated happy Halloween to you all. As I write, I'm listening to Big D's first experience of Carrie and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on it. It's been on my mind for a while, and I'd like to finally commission a film after listening for a number of years. Since COVID, I think. Thank you for the entertainment. As parent to an 8-month-old, I'd like to commission one of my favorite childhood films as a gift to him. Off the top of my head, I don't think you've done too many Joe Dantes, have you? Well, either way, I'd like to add to your Dante canon by commissioning the 1998 classic Small Soldiers. I love this as a kid, and I still love it today. Let me know if you'd be up to this flick, and I'll send the money over. Thanks and best wishes, Josh from Worcester Park, England.
100%. This is the film I kept thinking, the one we did for Tom, the Universal Soldier. That's what I thought this film was. This is the toys.
Oh, I remember this.
This is the toy line that comes to life, and it's a bunch of like mercenaries, or it's kind of like the big, they were almost like the He-Man sized figures. So not the little G.I. Joes. And it was an R-rated, I think, Small Soldiers. I don't think PG-13 was what it was.
And the voice actors in this film, by the way, just if people aren't familiar with it, you got Phil Hartman, R.I.P., Tommy Lee Jones, Jay Moore, David Cross, Kirsten Dunst, like Dennis Leary. This is a serious film, horribly named, I might add. And I love that this is being dedicated to your son.
Probably wanted to call it Toy Soldiers, but I think that was taken. They couldn't do that. Yeah, that was a film that's also in our list. That's another one of those like
Taps?
Yes, it's kind of like a Taps. That was Toy Soldiers.
Which Brave Sir Eric brought up. So look at that, guys. Connecting listeners from all over the world. Well, thank you, Josh, for your commission. We'd love to do it. And finally, we have a commission request from Chris G, who says, Dear Big D and Gene, I hope that you had a wonderful holiday season and a great start to your new year. I'd like to commission a review of the 1980 Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis movie, Used Cars, in memory of my beloved beagle, Daisy. If this is a go, I will stuff some dollars in your metaphorical G-string via the link. Then is the next step to leave a voicemail for you? In the time that I've been listening to the show from episode 17, Terminator 2 in 2017, I have moved countries, gotten married, and become an American, as well as so much more. You guys are the one constant, and I want to thank you for that. I had hoped to commission a movie way before now, but life has always intervened. Until now. P.S. I see you have Running Man coming up. The female lead in that is a friend. I'm intrigued to hear this episode when it comes. Many thanks to you, and very best wishes. That comes from Chris.
Well, Chris, congratulations on becoming a citizen. It's a big deal. Vanessa became a citizen, I think, probably now, like 8 years ago. So it's a big deal. Congratulations. Yes, Used Cars. I remember it vividly. It's Kurt Russell. And not to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, I remember that he does some kind of commercial, and he says something like, we've got miles of cars, and they're going to sue him. So he has to go and collect 2 miles of cars if you put them front to back or whatever it is. But I remember liking it a lot, and the cast is great. So it would be fun to go back and see a young Kurt Russell in a Zemeckis film. That I did not remember.
Chris, all my love to your beagle, Daisy. This movie tickles at nostalgia for me. It's one of those, and these are rare, Big D, where I know as a very young child, this was on the screen, but my brain didn't understand what the fuck I was looking at. So it's crazy. It's like one of those things where there's like an inaccessible memory somewhere deep in my brain, and I want it. And I think it's gonna be one of those movies where I put it on and it starts to come back to me.
Well, do you remember why? He does like outlandish commercials. So he has girls in G-strings doing live TV commercials, and they're like on the top of the cars, and the guys are going in there like zombies, just signing the contracts, putting the paper up against the girl's ass and signing their names.
I mean, I don't know if I think I saw this when I was like a year or two old, so I don't know if I remember it for that reason.
I think you absorbed it, Gene.
Yeah.
I think you could sense it.
Little baby boner.
All
right, Chris. Sounds like we're in.
Touch that. Yeah, we're in, Chris.
I hope not. All right, Big D. What do we have coming up next week?
So, Gene, we're going to finally transition off of Die Hard, and we're going to go to the classic adaptation of the Shakespearean romantic tragedy for the screen, updated with the setting of a postmodern city named Verona Beach. In this version, the Capulets and the Montagues are 2 rival gangs. Juliet is attending a costume ball thrown by her parents. Her father has arranged her marriage to the boorish Paris. As part of a strategic investment plan, Romeo attends the mass ball, and he and Juliet fall in love. Commissioned by Jeremy B. And this is it's going to be a good one. I have good memories of this, and I'm glad you're here with me because I think you'll bring some literary insight that me, as the dumb American, would miss.
Just call me the Prince of Cats, Big D. Also, Garbage on the soundtrack. Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, I remember the soundtrack was great. I bought that soundtrack, so I don't even remember what else is on it.
Some of the musical interludes, not so great, but John Leguizamo, chef's kiss in this one. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for your upcoming commission. Thank you to Luke and Patrick for commissioning Die Hard with a Vengeance. Thank you to all of our commissioners who make this podcast possible. This concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share it with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. Email us, hosts@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever I find podcasts to be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Did my heart love till now?
In fair Verona, where we lay our scene, two households, both alike in dignity.
Throw your mistempered weapons to the ground!
From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life.
Romeo! Thou art a villain! Turn and draw! Turn and draw! Romeo's no Tibble! Romeo must not live!
My only love sprang from my only hate.
Romeo is banished!
Maybe they will murder me.
Let them find me here.
A plague of bounty houses! I am fortune-full!
Leonardo DiCaprio, Claire Danes, in William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.
Good night. Good night.
This summer is hot. Let's go to a swimming pool.